are the weirdos, mister.
Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate, make it right.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea. It's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven, you guys. We're so happy to have you here as always.
Yay! We both got hit with a case of butterflies as soon as we hit record today. We're like, oh, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. Like, I think my excitement just putting those in there. It's like this topic for some reason just made me feel rejuvenated, and maybe that's the word that needs to be used, and you may see why in a little while.
Yay, I'm excited to hear everything. I don't know really anything about today's topic, guys, so this is all going to be new for me too, so we're going to be going down a fun ride.
Yes, it's exciting. Do you have anything to talk about before we get into it?
I did have some fun this morning. Before recording, I was hanging out with the boyfriend, and we were going to go get some pancakes, and it was kind of funny. There was a bit of a wait due to COVID. It seems like some restaurants, they have limited capacity, so we're like, yeah, let's just wait, because no matter where we go, there's going to be a wait. And so we're waiting there, and like the lady, she'd be telling people, she's like, oh yeah, it's about like a 45-minute to an hour wait. If you want, you could go to church, or you could go shopping. And we were just like, oh, she's one of those. And like my boyfriend, being the Satanist that he is, he has this like Satanist hoodie on. He's got a goat in it. It says like God free on the side. And I was like, oh, do you think that they're weirded out by you? Like, I forget, because to me he's just like my lovely little like boyfriend. He makes me so happy and safe. Like, I'm like, do people think you're like mean or scary? And then sure enough, when we got into the restaurant, we got put into the weirdo corner, like where there was nobody else around. And I was like, oh yeah, we got banished to the corner for wearing all black.
Yeah, but on the flip side, you didn't have to be around a bunch of people.
Exactly. It's kind of perfect, because that's what we said. It's like, yeah, now we can say inappropriate jokes and laugh with each other and not have anybody around us.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I just got the weirdo treatment today, and I liked it.
Yeah. We are the weirdos, mister.
Exactly.
That's us.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I was feeling so tired, because I think I was just telling you right before a podcast that one of my kids turned 21, and so we were celebrating. And I was like, I partied a little too hard, and not in the way that you would expect. It was just because I ate the wrong type of foods that I'm not used to.
You just indulged your tummy.
Overindulged my stomach.
That's a good thing.
Just made things wrong. Yeah.
Good times.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's get into it, because I have a feeling this is going to be a long episode. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be a long one.
Awesome.
So today we are talking about the Integratron. So I feel like I really didn't choose this topic. I think that it chose me, which is really crazy to say. Like, it just sort of chose me. Like, I was sitting down a couple weeks ago with a book, and I was like, okay, I'm going to read through this book, and I'm going to see what I'm going to talk about. But I sat down, and my dog jumped in a way that made the book open up on its own. And the book opened up to the Integratron. And I was like, okay, let's take this synchronicity and turn it into something.
Yeah, some bibliomancy.
That's right. And so I started looking into it, because I know you and we're like really wanting to get more boots on the ground experience. So my first initial thought was, do I have time to go all the way down to the Integratron and come back? And then when I was looking at it, I was like, okay, I don't have time for this, because it was like 15 hours one way.
Yeah, where is the Integratron?
So it is located at 2477 Belfield Boulevard in Landers, California. And Landers is in the Yucca Valley, just 20 miles north of Joshua Tree National Park,
Nice.
Which we know is just kind of this place that people go to have cool experiences, whether it's hiking, meditating, contact in the desert kind of stuff. So I already know that Joshua Tree is this really cool place. And I think over the past couple of weeks, as I've been researching the Integratron, I've heard different things about all the different towns in the area. So like randomly something will come up on the news, or a podcast that I'm listening to is talking about this area, this specific area that has nothing to do with the Integratron itself. And I'm just like, this is like a hotbed of activity that happens in this Yucca Valley.
Yeah, I've heard
like all the way. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you say Joshua Tree and that whole area, I think UFOs, right? That's one of the things.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people have UFO experiences, but also paranormal experiences as far as seeing ghosts and objects being moved around and orbs and all sorts of things like that. It is this kind of place in the desert that I also found out Landers is sort of near 29 Palms. And 29 Palms, I found out through a podcast that I was listening to this week that somehow talked about this, like I was saying, that I was not expecting. I was listening to this kind of murder podcast, and they were talking about how this place, a lot of people may get in trouble and then get sent to 29 Palms to live after, as part of their like rehabilitation back into society after being in jail for a long period of time. So I was like, that's creepy and a little scary. But anyways, aside from that dark stuff.
So just murderers are basically?
Yeah, like murderers, rapists, that kind of thing.
Okay, so not light crimes.
Yeah, not light crimes. So that's scary. But that's just in 29 Palms, has nothing to do with the Yucca Valley itself, really. But so let's talk about the Integratron. So according to its website, the Integratron is the fusion of art, science, and magic. And so when I read that, I was like, my brain was like, what the heck do they mean magic is in this?
Yeah.
And that just left me asking so many questions. And then all of a sudden I was just dropping down into this rabbit hole, and I was lost in Wonderland like little Alice.
I can see why. That's like a pretty awesome trifecta. Like, wait, I love art. Science, science is cool, facts. And then it's like, magic.
I'm like, combined into one? That's my jam.
Yeah, some kind of badass alchemy.
Yeah. So I started asking myself like all these questions, like the who, what, where, when, why kind of thing. Like, what makes this thing special? What is this place exactly? Who are the people involved? That kind of thing. So I wanted to start like from the beginning. And as per my research typically goes, I kind of went all over the place. And then I'm trying to make my story legit.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I found out. So from what I understand, this building is a domed structure. It's in the middle of this desert area. It's like on the edge of a military base. So like literally the property that the Integratron sits on is next to a military base. The design of the building itself was created by a man named George Van Tassel, and along with his church named the College of Universal Wisdom, they made this building with kind of specific parts and geometrical precision, like in order to provide an electrostatic charge that would then in turn heal the cells of the body to be able to prolong life and heal at this kind of cellular level, changing the programming of the human cells completely.
Interesting.
And he says that he was given this information by space people.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes. So according to a direct quote from a paper that I read that was published by George Van Tassel, he says, the purpose of the Integratron is to recharge energy into living cell structure to bring about longer life with youthful energy. He says this has been the goal of many people since Ponce de Leon started looking for the fountain of youth. our effort here in this giant machine is not the first idea of its kind. It is the first time that other research efforts have been brought together and applied simultaneously, which I'll kind of go into when I talk about him. I wanted to backtrack just a second, though, and talk about his church, the College of Universal Wisdom. So it started making me think that this sounded extremely familiar. Like, I don't know what it was. This whole situation, I know we've talked about him just once very briefly in one of our first episodes, like probably within the first 20. I don't remember which one.
Okay.
But anyways, this College of Universal Wisdom and all of the humans associated with it in this program that he provided, they were given messages from a being called Ashtar, which might sound familiar to you. I'm not sure
like
if it
god,
does.
Right?
Yeah, like a god. And so it wasn't just Ashtar, but it was all of his friends. And supposedly these are extraterrestrial beings that are from this group of light beings that have been trying to help the people of Earth in their ascension process.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently this contact with Ashtar later became known as the Universal Council of the Confederation of Planets, or the Universal Confederation of Light. And many people throughout the years have received messages from this Ashtar. Like, he has supposedly done like made a call in the 60s or 70s, like from space down to Earth. And this is very controversial. Some people have said it's been debunked, but you know how I feel about things that have been debunked. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's fake or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. There's just certain things that you can't really debunk. But the little I know about them is that these beings of light have kind of been associated with the Ascended Masters as well. So like all of those Ascended Masters that we've heard about work with Ashtar, and he is an Ascended Master himself. So whether that means that he lived on Earth at one time or never lived on Earth at all, I don't really know, because I don't quite understand the Ascended Masters 100% myself.
Right. Like, are they gods, spirit guides, aliens? We don't know.
Right. Or a mix.
Yeah. One and the same.
So, right.
Okay.
So before I talk more about the building itself, I kind of wanted to talk about who George Van Tassel is, because you can't really understand the Integratron without knowing who George is. So George Van Tassel was born in 1910. And when he grew up, he was a test pilot and an engineer. And he worked for places like Douglas Aircraft, Hughes Aircraft, Lockheed. There were some things that he worked on that were extremely confidential that were not released out to the public. There's stuff that he worked on that was experimental aircraft. He worked side by side with the military sometimes. He knew a lot of smart things that I know very little about.
So things that people would say make him a credible witness and things like that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And some people disagree with that, but I still think that he was a credible witness because of some of the experiences that he had. So in 1947, after George had been working very hard at all of his different piloting kind of jobs and all these engineer type jobs, all this stuff, just one day he sort of woke up and he decided that he wanted a different pace of life. He just felt this kind of calling to change things in his life. Like he wanted to run off and start things fresh for him and his family. And so he quit his job, which is something that I know millions of people wish they could do. And he took all the money that he had and he bought 4 square miles of land in Giant Rock, California.
Nice.
So Giant Rock is this place where there's a hotbed of activity, from UFOs to all sorts of things. People say there's a gate inside the rock that transcends you up into space. These kind of tales have been around since before a white man was in California. So there are a lot of like etchings and carvings into the rocks themselves by native peoples. Anyways, he moved his whole family, including his children, to this spot where they did not build a house. They lived inside the cave system inside Giant Rock.
Okay, that's badass.
So imagine living in primitive conditions, no toilet, no shower, none of that kind of stuff.
In my mind, they had totally upgraded it all in Swiss Family Robertson to shower. Like, it's just smart living. You already have the foundation. Think of how effective that is.
Right. So his kids were teenagers at this time, or just about into teenagers. Some of them were teenagers and some of them were not. And so I just kept thinking, I don't think I could have handled that as a child.
No, any teenager living in a cave would be so whiny.
Right.
Like, my friends don't have to deal with this. They have Wi-Fi. Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how they would speak to him in 1947. Like, would they be like, this is bullshit? Right. And then you're grounded for life.
Well, it is the 40s. I guess there's really not much luxury to be had.
Right. Okay, so George on his property, he builds a thing called an interplanetary airport, where he was saying that anybody from anywhere could land in this airport. And he leased a lot of it out to the government. Like, he had a lot of government contracts, so government planes were flying in and out of there to get to the military base.
Like, anyone on other planets is welcome.
Yes, he was saying that.
Okay.
Yeah, he was saying that.
Okay.
Yeah, he was saying that, but mostly it was, government. And he made a lot of money. The government paid him a lot of money to use this airport.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And also they opened up a restaurant that they called Giant Rock Interplanetary Restaurant. Okay, and his wife ran the restaurant. Yeah. She ran the restaurant. He ran the airport. And then from like 1953 to 1957, George decided he wanted to have these meditation sessions where people could come and meditate with him inside his cave home, meditate in the space, because there was this kind of vibration that he was drawn to in that area. That's why he chose that land, is the vibration of the land. He'd been there before and he knew the vibrations of it were something spectacular. And he had this scientific mind that he wanted to dig deep into that. Mm-hmm. So he took his family there. He started doing these meditation sessions. People would come from all over the world to meditate with him, which is kind of groundbreaking in the 50s. Like, you don't hear a ton of stories about people meditating back in the 50s.
Not really. Yeah. So what kind of rock was it?
Giant Rock. Giant Rock, California. Yeah. So I think it's made out of granite and different crystals. And
that's what I'm wondering. Kind of like, what kind of mystical, metaphysical properties are associated with the rock itself? Yeah.
Yeah. So he not only did meditation sessions, but he did channeling sessions later on too, which I'll kind of get into in a minute. But he did say that this space provided calmness, and it was kind of like this wealth of energy healing capabilities that would come from the rock. And like I said, that kind of stuff had been talked about when Native peoples were here and white people weren't. Eventually, this started him doing these annual spacecraft conventions.
Yes.
Like, people would come from all over, and it was just like Contact in the Desert is today. If you don't know what that is, it's this thing that happens every year out in the desert near Joshua Tree. And I think in the same spot that George did these. And so I've never been to Contact in the Desert, so I don't know for sure. Don't quote me on that. But people nowadays, they go and they have speakers, that kind of thing. Well, he was doing the same kind of thing there. Like, people would come from all over the world to these conventions, and there would be speakers there like George Adamski and all the high people who were studying UFOs at the time. And not only people that were ufologists, but scientists would come and also do their talks about why they thought there was life on other planets and what they had seen. And so it was kind of this you won't be judged here space that people could come to.
Mm-hmm. A safe space.
Yes. Yeah. Where religion is not the topic as much as it is finding out what's going on. And every time that he held a convention, he charged the money and he would keep it. He didn't, he was using it. Eventually he would use that money to build the Integratron. But anyways, there was something that happened to him that sparked him wanting to build the Integratron. And I was lucky enough to watch like all these documentaries on this thing that happened over the past couple of days. Like, I'm kidding you. Like, I did not sit down to do my research for this until Friday, which we record on Sundays, you guys. So I've only been researching this for a couple of days. So like I watched like 3 or 4 documentaries. There's like thousands and thousands of pages on the Integratron website of all these papers that George Van Tassel has written. And I combed through like tons and tons of pages of information. And like my mind was just exploding with all this science that I know nothing about. So.
Right. Like, what does it mean?
What does it all mean? But anyways, I want to tell you about George's event that made him want to build the Integratron. So on August 24th, 1953, around 2 a.m, or actually I should say in August 1953, he was having one of those meditation events at his, at Giant Rock. And so a bunch of people came, and a lot of times when they would come for these meditation sessions, they would put up a bunch of tents and they would come down in their RVs and that kind of thing, their campers, whatever it was at the time period. And it would just be like this big campground. So he's out there in his tent sleeping with his wife. And all of a sudden at 2 o'clock in the morning on August 24th, he wakes up and he doesn't know why. Like, he's confused, he's disoriented, and he's sitting there and he's like, something just woke me up. I'm going to go investigate. And he goes out of his tent and he sees that, you know, the moon, it's a full moon that night, which they knew. That's why they had the meditation session then, because they were all meditating under the full moon hours prior to this event. And anyways, he steps out of his tent and he sees a man named Daniel Boone come up to him. Not Daniel Boone, like from the old stories. This is a different Daniel Boone. Yeah. Different Daniel Boone. Anyways, this Daniel would actually marry one of George Van Tassel's daughters later on. Anyways, Daniel's like, hey, I woke up because I felt this vibration through my whole entire body. And Daniel was like, I don't know what was going on. He said he was just all of a sudden felt this vibration. He jumped up out of bed, or his sleeping bag, whatever. And he looks up and this craft is coming down from the sky. Now, Daniel Boone was sleeping not in a tent, but like outside, like just sleeping under the stars kind of dude. And he looks up, sees this craft come down, and he's like, what the heck? I need to go get George right now. So he runs over to George, and George is coming out of his tent as Daniel's running up to tell him there's something you need to come and see. But before George even gets a chance to walk over to what Daniel wants him to see, another man appears. And he comes up to George, and George is like still a little disoriented because he's been asleep. And he looks at this dude and he thinks, you know, maybe this guy needs some help. Maybe has some car trouble or something. I need to help him. And he says, is there something I can do for you? And the man says, my name is Salganda. I would be pleased to show you our craft. And so George is like, what? What's this guy talking about? And so they walk over to where the craft is at. And what he sees is this huge bell-shaped craft with a round light underneath, coming from underneath, you know, just like that typical bell-shaped kind of craft with the light. And I'm sorry, I'm just so speechless at this part. The craft is 30 feet in diameter, 19 feet high, and is hovering silently 10 feet off the ground. And George, he goes over and he's like, oh, okay, I don't know what I'm seeing here. I've never seen this before in my life, but he's just real calm about it. And I watched an interview with George telling this story. Like, I heard him tell this story through an interview that he did with a newscaster in Washington. Anyways, he goes over, and Salganda and him are standing next to each other in the light that the craft is beaming down. And then he says it's like he was on a very slow elevator and it just took him up inside the craft very slowly.
That's awesome.
I know, right? So he goes through this gravitational hole. He enters this dome and sees this dome-shaped room. And so not only is it just him and Salganda, there are 3 other beings inside the craft as well. And he says that all of these people looked very human, as if they could just get out of the craft and walk around with everybody today. He said they had light colored blondish white hair and a very deep tan. And he noticed that the instruments that are not like anything he's seen before. So there's all these instruments with like tubes and electronic panels without any wires. And he's an engineer and a pilot. So George is like, what the heck is this? I've never seen this in all my years. And Salganda starts speaking to George, not like telepathically, but like how I'm speaking with you right now. And he tells George that they are from Venus. They have a message for him.
I was thinking
so
Venusians.
Venusians!
I was like, blonde? They've got to be from Venus.
That's right. So the message that Salganda gives them is the same message that a lot of people claim that they get from the Venusians, that we are ruining the earth and we must advance and ascend in order to maintain earth in a proper manner. And they believe the only way to do this is to pause the aging process. They think the only way that humanity can live is if we pause our aging process. And so
I don't really know why that would be.
Well, because they just think there's so much war and so much hatred that's been ingrained in us and in our cells that we need to change our cell makeup in order to let go of that war and that hatred.
Okay.
Yeah. According to all the stuff that I read, like, this is what I think they're trying to get across.
So basically keep giving us eternal youth and then our cells regenerate kind of thing.
And we can eventually become
higher,
kind of like them. Yeah. Higher beings where we don't need war and we don't need things in order to survive on Earth.
I need all my things.
So the being Salganda, he says that he is 730 years old. Mm-hmm. Let that sink in for a second. He said in Earth years. He's like, it's not, years are different where he's from, but in Earth years, he would be 730.
I think that's how long it would take me to really figure shit out.
To get my shit together.
To become like a functioning adult. Anytime.
So Salganda says that it was because of his long life and that the long lives of their species that has made them more peaceful, and also that they have become not only emotionally more advanced than us, but technologically more advanced. Mm-hmm. So they start to tell George how he can achieve this fountain of youth, so to speak. And they give George this mathematical formula of F equals 1 over T. Oh, I'm so sorry.
He hates math.
I'm so sorry, doggy.
I don't actually ever know how to make her stop. I don't think anything I've ever done helps.
Do you ever snap at her? That's how I get my dog to snap. Yeah, I've trained her by snaps.
Oh, like this? Like that?
Yeah.
I was like, you fucking bitch, is that what you meant?
No! Snaps.
Because I've snapped at her. Right now.
Dogs respond to sound. So not words. Okay. Okay, so they give George this mathematical formula, F equals 1 over T, where F equals frequency and T equals time. And this equation, when I looked it up and I was kind of doing research into it, it wasn't really ever credited to anybody, but it is a huge part of physics today. and would not really come about to be a part of physics until the 1960s, which was 10 to 12 years after George got this information. I wanted to say that there's a very fun tidbit that I watched this TV interview that aired June 18th, 1964. I kind of was talking about it earlier, but according to George, he takes this formula to some of his science buddies and they start testing it. And they are able to use the formula to transport a chair from one part of the room to the other.
Excuse me?
Yes. So the chair blips out of existence and shows up in another part of the room.
We can do that?
Apparently.
This is all coming from George?
This was coming from George. Okay. Yeah.
So this all comes down to me trusting George or not trusting George.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So then he says that they took an ordinary TV, so a TV from the 1950s, whatever that looks like. I don't know because I don't know. But they took an old TV and they were able to use this F equals 1 over T using this TV, and were able to see stuff from the past.
That is super weird. Like he would just turn to a channel and it's the past.
Well, they had to, I don't know. He didn't explain how they did it because he couldn't explain the science to normal everyday people, because he said this was being used by the military now, that he was working with military and working with scientists in order to perform these tasks. And he could not divulge how they got from point A to point B on national television because it was national security.
That's a good way to get out of explaining yourself, isn't it, George?
Yeah, right? I was like, do you believe him or not believe him? But he sounded like he was just talking matter-of-factly, like not excited about anything. He just talked like a boring science dude.
What did he say that he remembered seeing about the past? Do you remember?
He didn't. He just said, imagine if you could take a TV and you could see any program that you wanted to see, but instead of it being TV, you could see any event. So imagine taking a TV and being able to watch a program from 100 years ago.
I'm not even sure how this is happening. So it makes me think, okay, who's filming this past event?
Right. And do they have those copies in the military?
Okay.
Yeah. Because the military kept all of his research, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So in 1957, this is where we're at now in 1957. So this is 4 years after George has his alien contact in the desert. He ends his desert alien conventions, and he uses all the money that he's saved and purchases the land to build the Integratron. And the land he chose very carefully. He said that it is a geographical hotbed of energy. Not just him, but thousands of scientists say where this place is located is on a geographical hotbed of energy. This sort of baffles people. They don't know why it's this way. But there's a magnetic vortex where the Earth's magnetic field is heightened where this building is.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so a lot of scientists travel from all over the world just to go see it even today. They say that the radius of the magnetic vortex goes on for several miles outside of the building. George and his group, when they start to do everything, they draw up the plans to build the time machine, and then they build the machine by hand. Yes, I'm calling it a time machine because they called it a rejuvenation machine, a time machine.
Is this like a spa treatment thing?
Kind of, but not. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to explain to you how it sort of works. But the group goes to build this on. They don't use any nails to build it. They don't use any metal on the inside of the building. The only metal is like it, because it's this domed building. It sort of looks like it's a dick. I'm not going to lie to you. There's like a shaft of the building and the dome of the building. I'm so sorry. I know. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to say. Like a dick. So, anyways, there's like a shaft of the building, and then there's this dome part at the top, and on the outside of it is this sort of rib.
The circumcised is the uncircumcised.
I can't stop laughing now. I'm so sorry, you guys. But coming off of the rim,
God damn it.
I'm so sorry, are these metal spindles that kind of jut out. Oh, too much dick talk here. I'm getting warm. Anyway, so they make this building. They've got these spokes coming out of it. The building itself is 38 feet high. It's 55 foot in diameter. And the dome part on the inside, like I said, is completely made out of wood, and it looks like a cathedral inside. Mm-hmm. Like echoey cathedral, that kind of sound. And there's this one specific spot, as in most cathedral spots. A lot of cathedrals have this. It's nothing new. He didn't create this, in my opinion. This thing's been around for thousands and thousands of years. When they create these dome kind of cathedral ceilings, even our grandma's church has it. There's a specific spot that you stand in on a second floor of the dome. We have one in the second floor of our grandma's church. You stand in this spot, and everything, just all the vibrations, every sound reverberates through you. And so there's a spot in the dome that's like that.
I'm having to look up a picture because I'm just curious to see this penis building.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. The building itself is not just a building, but it's meant to be a machine. So the machine's dome is supposed to rotate.
What?
Yes.
So
it's built to rotate. They do not have it rotating today, but it is supposed to rotate. And because of this rotation, I'm going to tell you the theory. This is what it is. So the theory is that they built it in this dome shape. They would be on the inside of the dome, and the dome would be spinning around. And as it's spinning around at a specific speed, the spindles would then create wind. The spindles on the outside of the building would create wind. Okay. And then in turn, this wind would somehow, just like, what's his name in his kite, Ben Franklin in his kite, would pull down the electricity from the air, mm-hmm. create lightning all around the building that would in turn be sucked into the spindles. What? And then through the spindles, it would, let's see, I'm sorry. I lost my, okay. This energy would go down into the spindles, like up through the dome, down into a giant tube. And this tube was made completely out of wood. I mean, that tube still exists today. All of this parts of the building still exist today. So the tube would be there, all out of wood, going from the top story to the bottom story, and then lined around it in copper, which would become this sort of conductor. Mm-hmm. And then it would create an energy field on the bottom floor of the building. And the theory was that, kind of like a Tesla coil, I suppose. So the theory would be that if you walked through that magnetic energy, then that would in turn change your body backwards. And from what I read, it would make it so that your cells would totally go back 10 to 20 years. So if you walked through this field and you were 20 years old, you would no longer exist. But if you walked through the field and you were 60 years old, you would go back to as if you were 40.
Okay, that sounds better.
Yeah. So there were age limits on how they were going to do this, all these kind of things. And they seriously felt that this would work. And they were getting ready to, they had it all built. They had all these plans. They wanted to make sure they had all of the equipment because they had to have all of this stuff that has zero electricity. So because there's zero electricity to this building even today. There's no electricity in the building. They don't have lights. They don't have running water in there. None of that.
Okay.
So if you remember, I said that they bought the land in 1957. The building was not completed until 1978, the building, the plans, and getting all of the equipment. And so this is going to sound awfully fucking convenient about how this next part plays out.
Okay.
But the night was set to be February 10th of 1978 that they were going to be doing this first actual test of the building to see how it worked. And the night he got everything ready the night before. So February 9th, he was getting the whole building ready, getting it set up for everybody to come on the 10th. He goes back to the hotel that him and his wife are staying at. And he fucking dies of a heart attack.
Poor guy.
But there is so much speculation around his death. They don't know if that's how he really died because, number one, there was never an autopsy done.
Okay.
And number two, he was cremated within 2 days of him being dead.
To destroy the evidence.
So did he use the machine and it didn't turn out the way he wanted it to be? Did he get killed by the government? Did his wife kill him? Did somebody else kill him? Because what happened next is within the next few weeks after his death, everything that was inside of the building disappeared. All of his notes, all of the equipment, everything. And you cannot find any of his work online through the government databases, CIA, FBI. And I checked that out because I was like, I'm already into the CIA. Like, I look up that Freedom of Information Act stuff all the time when I'm doing research. And so I tried looking him up in both the CIA and FBI database, and there is nothing. And that is suspicious to me.
Right.
That is very suspicious. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy head, but to me, do I believe his story? I don't know. Do I believe the science? I do.
Like he might have been onto something.
He might have been onto something. I believe that he was. And the fact that none of it is made available by the government, and we've made so many advancements since this time, it does seem like something happened.
So let's say it works. Go that route. He's saying it takes about 20 years off your life.
Off your life.
So what would the government want to stop that? Is that because, they make money from us, from medicines and things like that?
I don't think, in my opinion, here's what I think. I don't think it took years off your life. I think it was a time machine. And I think you could travel in time or you can travel in space. So I think that, in my opinion, just from the little I read, the little I read and the little I know about science, is that I think that it was some sort of transportation machine, not to make you age differently or change your cell makeup. I think he was onto something. I think he found something the world wasn't ready for.
Yeah. Okay. So it's still a standing building, but it's not necessarily...
Yes, I have a whole bunch of stuff on this still. I'm not done. That was just George Van Tassel. Are you ready for the rest?
Yeah.
So what is it today? So I can tell you after George died until 1986, so from 1978 to 1986, his second wife owned the building and she rented out to different groups. It basically pretty much sat dormant and started deteriorating for the most part. And then in 1987, a new person bought it and they owned it until 1999. And during that time, they were trying to fix it up. They used it for sky watches. They used it as a place for people to come and do scientific experiments. They would rent it out to religious groups, and they would also do a lot of magic there, which is phenomenal.
It is cool.
Yeah. And then in the year 2000, these sisters, Joanne, Patty, and Nancy Carl, they purchased the building, and they have been visiting that space since I think the 70s, since after George died. And they would go there every year to kind of detox from their lives. This is such a beautiful story because they were these women who actually had real jobs, like one was a scientist, I think, and one was a business person. And I think one worked in the medical field. And they would go every year to this building because they would have yoga retreats there, like week-long yoga retreats in the early 80s, mid 80s. Mm-hmm. And so they would go there and detox from their life is what they called it. Yeah, which is something that we should all be doing every year. I feel like we should all be detoxing from our lives, taking that vacation time to kind of recharge. And so what they've done since they've owned it is they've almost completely restored the whole, not just the building, but the land itself to make it pleasing for people to want to come and visit. And they do sound bath meditations there. And I actually got to do one of these sound baths. I'm really excited because they had it where you could purchase a sound bath online, and they did it live. So I'll talk about that in a minute.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I just wanted to kind of talk about these women's philosophy for a minute, is that they say that with the dome, because it's this parabolic shape, it makes the sound kind of reverberate through the room, which they believe in turn reverberates through your whole core, through your whole being, all the way into your soul, which is so beautiful. That's the magic part for me. And they say that the sound is able to not, and this is kind of proven scientifically, I feel like now, is that sound heals and transcends you to places that you have sometimes aren't able to go in your regular everyday life. So they say when they do the sound baths that each person has their own unique experience, and it's a metaphysical one. They claim that sometimes this space is very unique because of the energy. And as the sound is reverberating, it sort of melts away all the frames of our reality so that you can kind of see in between.
Mm-hmm.
So that may mean that you see ghosts, you see beings, you get messages from your spirit guides. You can have this meditative, magical experience. That shit's beautiful to me. Like, I shouldn't call it shit because it's not shit. It's just a word. But another thing that they do is they keep an altar in the space, and they have like different pictures of ascended masters on there and different people and gods. I think they had a Pan statue on there. Yeah. So I found that to be very beautiful. And they say that they always cleanse the space daily, and they do all these cleansing rituals in there and cleanse themselves and all these wonderful, beautiful things. So I took the experience. They do these crystal singing bowls, you know, they're big giant crystal bowls, and they have like 20 of them, and they put them up in that dome second floor so that you can hear the reverberation. And it was kind of nice. It was awesome. It's an hour-long session. It's $20 for a Zoom meeting. I guess they typically give them in person, but because of COVID, they decided to go to Zoom.
Honestly, that's really smart because you're reaching people who like can't drive 15 miles or more all over the world, and they're probably making a lot more revenue. Like, even if you're doing in-person plus Zoom, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, I would do this again. I would totally do it again. But I wanted to tell you about my experience because it was kind of phenomenal for me. I did this experience before I knew anything about the Integratron. So I did this almost 2 weeks ago.
Before you had decided to research this topic. Weird. Like you're saying, it called you.
It called me. So this guy's name who gave the class was Joe, and he comes on and he says something that kind of resonated with me. He was saying how he was just struggling with some things recently, and basically that he felt like he's being held back and he's feeling kind of stagnant, just treading water and not really knowing where to go, what direction to go in his life. And he said his mom said something to him, which happens to be one of the sisters that owns the building. And she said, it's probably fear that's holding you back. And she used fear as an acronym, and she said it was false evidence appearing as reality. So basically she was saying that fear is this thing that keeps us from creating the reality we want, which is something that, I mean, that really hit me hard, because since COVID hit, I've been working on this fear thing, kind of trying to shed my fears so that I can be the best person that I can be without feeling this negative hold, that something has a negative hold on me.
Right. And I mean, that's so relatable, because it's just like kind of that voice in the back of your head telling you can't, you won't succeed, you're going to fail, don't try for whatever it is. We all have that, I think, as humans.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Or we might look at ourselves, like we're doing videos now in our after show, and I'm like, oh my God, look at my face. I'm old, you know, but I'm like, shed that fear, shed that fear. But, so I had that amazing sound bath session. He based it on the chakras. So each bowl had a different chakra release. They have you kind of laid down, and they play. I'm sure it's the same thing in person. I don't know if anybody's done a sound bath experience before, but have you done one before, Sharon?
I've done yoga classes that do sound baths as part of the process. And it was a really cool thing. Like, I felt so relaxed. It was like really worth my time and money. Like, I fucking loved it.
Yeah, very nice. Like I felt like even though it was with headphones on laying in my bedroom, I felt rejuvenated afterwards. There's that word again, rejuvenated. That's how I felt. So I felt like I went through a time machine. like like my body was responding in different ways, and it was after that that I was able to get back into working out and trying to eat healthier.
Oh, that was the
And so
catalyst.
kind of yeah, it was like this catalyst. And then I had one other very, really strange synchronistic experience that happened. So I did that sound bowl session, and I realized later on that that night was the night that I had had that dream with the UFO that I told last week.
After the
Okay.
session.
Yes. Now, last night, I was watching, or not last night, it's 2 nights ago. I was watching those videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the documentaries that I came across, it was like maybe 30 minutes or whatever. And it was just an interview with the Carl sisters. And the intro to the video, it first started out with just this white UFO, like a flat UFO with kind of this dome shape on top. And then the next UFO that comes in, it was the same. I kid you not, to the T. It was the same thing that I saw outside Grandma's window in my dream.
That is so weird. So do you feel like the Integratron meditations can kind of link you to their weird UFO phenomena?
I mean, maybe. I just thought, I was like, is this deja vu? But I watched the video like 10 times, like it just that one little snippet. And it was just an intro and it was just real quick. But that same UFO with the same dark skies. And I was like, what the? It's like, what is this?
That is really cool. That's a really cool synchronicity, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was neat. It was neat.
I really like these images too. Like the first image that drew me to the Integratron was an interior shot. It's kind of like a drone shot from the top of the dome, looking down at all of the sound bowls. Like it looks like at least 20 freaking sound bowls, and I know each of those are at least 1,000 a pop. And then in like a really nice spiral, they have all these like little loungers, kind of yoga benches kind of situation. I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I would love to be in there and listen to a sound bath.
Yeah.
And I thought that before you even said you went and did the sound bath thing. So that's like super cool and crazy.
Yeah, it's so cool. So tell me what you think. Tell me, like I know what my outtake is, but I mean, I think I know what my outtake is, but what do you think about Van Tassel's story, the building itself, and what it's become today and what it came from? Like its history, really.
I feel like I'm open to a lot of it, and then there's some stuff that my head can't wrap around, but I'm like really open to the fact that he had this calling to this place. He had a calling to build it. And I would even be open to the fact that it's like channeled information from an alien or a spirit guide. Like I'm open to all that for sure. And so I could totally believe how he built this place. I think it's unfortunate that we never got to see like his full vision come to fruition. And I wonder if that ever will happen. Like I'm kind of wondering like why hasn't someone like Robert Bigelow like bought it and then got it up and running or something. But I love the fact that it's still like a metaphysical center, that people are doing very spiritual things there, cleansings, altar, worship, you know, just
magic.
Yeah, like a lot of people when I think people hear the word magic or occult, they're thinking like spells. And like magic is meditation, it's cleansing the body, it's, you know, just tuning in with yourself and something that is unknown, but not really questioning it so much or putting it in a box. And so like I think that it is like a really cool trifecta of science and magic and all that stuff that you're talking about.
And art.
Yeah, and art. Yeah.
Because the building itself on the inside, it's beautiful. It's phenomenal. They've used wood from the Pacific Northwest to create it. It's just, I can only imagine, like my senses were heightened when I even saw it. I was just like, oh my gosh, if we went in there, would it smell like that wood?
Mm-hmm.
Would you get the hints of that with some incense? And just, I was listening to kind of stories about people who just even walked up towards the building and could feel vibrations of the area,
Oh yeah,
like just to feel that vibration through you.
I
And
totally
I'm
believe
real
that.
sensitive to that kind of stuff. So,
Same. I feel like that's one of the things that like I at least have a little bit of an ability is to feel vibrations from things. Like when I told you I felt the vibrations from the giant amethyst a couple weeks ago. Like I'm sure if we
yes.
went there, we could feel really renewed. And you did it over a
Hmm.
Zoom meeting, so that's really cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. And like, I mean, that's the part that, like, regardless of how George Van Tassel came to this, did that happen? I don't know. I'm always on the fence when it comes to Ashtar and his light beings.
Yeah, there's a lot
Um,
there that can be hard to comprehend.
right. But the metaphysical parts of this building, I would love to see domes like this pop. I'm like, after called it a dick, I'm going to say I wish these buildings would pop up in other
I
places.
know, and I
But
thought that after you were like, the building itself, it's a big dick. It's so beautiful. All it is a dome. I was expecting
it's
like
a
a tall shaft with two balls at the bottom.
no, thank goodness it's not. I guess it's more like an observatory. I guess I shouldn't have said dick.
Really? Can't take it
I
back?
can't take it back. It's out there, you guys. Hopefully, it just at least gave you a laugh, which is good medicine in itself.
Yeah.
But seriously, I could totally see you and I running a place like that,
Oh
doing sound
yeah.
bowl meditations. Like I could see that being my life
I
forever.
know. Like sound bowls is honestly super super cool. They're just really expensive, so it's intimidating to like
Yeah,
get into. Um,
right,
it seems like a whole other community subgenre of wellness and metaphysical lifestyle is like a sound bowl lady.
right.
Like I'm sure you could get certified in that if you wanted
You
to.
can.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
sound healing,
can. It is,
right? A sound healer.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
sound healer. So I mean that stuff is just beautiful. And I do think there's like if we wanted to talk about Mantassel again, like I think something mysterious happened to him, whether it was his wife killed him or he actually got the machine up and running and then that in turn killed him. Like maybe he was playing with something, but he didn't get it quite right because he says that the aliens gave him the technology, but only they gave him a formula and told him what he should look for. And basically he had to come up with the design himself.
Okay.
They didn't tell him piece by piece this is what you needed to do. He did a pick and choosing. So like he chose Moses's tabernacle in the Bible and used some of the dimensions from that in order to create it. He knew that he needed to use no metal because the high intensity of the electricity could shoot metal from the wood. If you were in the room with that electricity, the nails would fly out of the building and into you.
Oh, that sounds horrifying.
Yeah. So they had to create the building without the nails.
Yeah.
So, and all of that stuff, like he was a big follower of Nikola Tesla. And he was a very religious person up until that point where he saw the aliens. And then he was no longer the same type of, I believe that God exists kind of person. And he sort of believed more in science
Right.
than he did God.
Yeah, I think it's just that there's a problem when you follow one religion too closely. It claims to have a lot of answers, but I think we have to be open that we don't know a lot of anything.
Right.
And there's
For
these
sure.
Venusians that just come down and boom, explode your whole mind and open up a whole new area, of exploration.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I was sort of reading the text of the church thing, the cult that he had. He wrote these books called The Proceedings, and what they were was channelings from the beings. So he would sit in a room and there's hours and hours of transcribed information. So I guess somewhere out there's tapes, taped recordings of him getting these messages. And it wasn't just him, it was other people. So they would take kind of turns in the church. And some of these people were just scientists, just like him. You know, they were science-based people, which kind of reminded me, is that something like Scientology maybe? But they didn't put rules on each other. That was the one thing that I liked about their cult. It wasn't about the rules. It was about living, and seeing how they could advance society into a more enlightened environment. And now look at California as one of the places that people go to become enlightened, right?
That's
people are always seeking enlightenment.
There's a lot
in
of
California.
Yeah, like I guess you could say hippie culture, or I don't know if that's the right term, but it's always been like that there.
Right. So, and I don't think that started well into the 70s. I think that started in the 70s. More metaphysical stuff started popping up after his death. So it is kind of very interesting kind of to see where we came from and where it is today.
Right. Like-minded people have always been kind of gravitating towards there. I know that there'd be like yoga people who would travel to America and kind of slowly start spreading it through actors, and then actors would kind of start spreading it too. So I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird energy field there, and maybe it is in the rocks. You know, maybe it is from the aliens, and they're trying to get us through that whole higher ascension thing. I don't know if that's something you can really force on a whole planet. Like, that seems like a pretty hard mission. It seems like it's up to each person to willingly like open up to it. I mean, I would love to live in that beautiful utopia that they kind of talk about in all their texts. Like, I would love to be in this place where all we're doing is meditating and living as in a peaceful environment. But the reality is we're so war hungry here, especially in the United States. We're constantly fighting against each other. And what these beings were talking about was creating peace and equality. And they said that America especially was full of inequality. And even imagine hearing that in the 1950s. Oh yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, we still are. We still can't let go. Some people can't.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of wasted energy on unnecessary like debates, even political stuff, and even with Corona, like it's exhausting how people just want to like argue about everything all the time.
Aren't you guys tired of fighting?
Yeah.
Bring out my big sign that says "Make love, not war." Oh,
this is a really interesting like place. I know we said paranormal Pacific Northwest, and we always love talking about metaphysical. My head wasn't even thinking of this. Like, I'm just glad that you found this. I love it. I feel like it's out of the box. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
And a lot of
I was wondering. Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, oh my gosh, is this too far? Did I go too far out of the Pacific Northwest?
No, I'm like, not at all. I think it was really fun, and it's good because we want to do a whole season of this, so we've got to keep it fresh and interesting.
Yeah, and this was definitely something new for us. Like, I guess I'm still kind of in awe in what the building is today more than anything, and makes me want to be there like now.
Yeah, I just want like a sound bath retreat. I don't even want a yoga retreat. I'm so lazy right now. I just want to lay there.
I just want to lay on my back and have the vibrations go through me. This sounds like sex.
Yes.
And on that note, let's end our episode.
But thank you for taking us down this cool route. I'm still open for suggestions, guys. Always message us. Our Gmail is kind of the best spot, I think, because it's coven2@gmail.com. If you'd like us to cover a place in the Pacific Northwest, hit us up. You guys know where to find us. All of our links will be listed below. Anything else we need to add?
I mean, join us on Patreon. We're about ready to go drop another video, so.
There you go. Yeah, we're going to do a little after show action on the other side of the Patreon.
Yeah, so take care. And may you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and join each other. Blessings to all.